Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome, thank you. Just wanted to make sure it was working. So we decided, I know it was last minute, we decided to go to Zoom just for today because we have a couple classmates who are sick, who got tested for COVID, and we just want to give that a little time, make sure we find out if that's something we need to worry about or not. You will be notified if there is a positive result. There is nothing right now. So please don't be concerned. We're just being super cautious today, okay? I have been able to update some of the Top Hat grades. I noticed that there were people who normally do their assignments that did not have assignments turned in on Top Hat. So please go back, double check your work, make sure you have your assignments turned in on Top Hat, because I don't want to go in there and grade and give people a bunch of zeros, because I don't want to do that. I want you to get good grades for these. So I'm gonna give you guys another day, make sure your assignments are turned in, and then I will continue to add more grades in. But 4.4 and 4.5 have been added onto Canvas, so those are your official grades. I do apologize. I was not able to get to everybody's emails over the weekend. There was a death in my family, so I was pretty distracted. But I will do my best to get everything caught up this week and answer all your emails, questions, concerns about grades. I will get to you, I promise. I have not forgotten. I just needed to take a couple days to deal with family issues. So, oh, we have another person joining us. We are going to start doing attendance directly through Canvas. So I've been putting them in separately by myself, but there's actually an app in Canvas where it does all the hard work for me. And it's also great because that's where I put in our seating chart. And this gives the administration of the school the ability to see who was there a certain day, where they were sitting, if there was a concern about COVID. So we're going to be moving to our new roll call method. And I'm going to go ahead and get us over there right now. In fact, so you will see, I'm going to share this screen with you really quick. Oops. Oh, come on, where is it? There you are. Okay. If I can find it. Okay. So you should be able to see now on the left-hand side, there is an attendance button that you can click on. And that's what I'm going to be using from now on to just do attendance automatically. And look at that, your seating chart is in there. Isn't that beautiful? Even has your pictures in there, your smiling faces. So it's all up to date, which is great for us.
Yeah, I don't know about anybody else, but I don't see that on the side.
You can't see it?
I can't.
Okay, let me see. I was about to unshare my sharing screen, but let's see if I can get it. Okay, can you see it now?
Let's see here.
Okay, well, let's not worry about seeing the seating chart. That it's not really that important. It was just kind of news of the class. But what I am going to do is take roll now, So when I do call your name, if you can please unmute yourself and let me know that you're here, that would be fantastic. So you get credit for being here today. Okay. Amy. Is Amy Barcel here? Okay. Danielle Barkhurst.
Here.
Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute.
Okay, I thought you were there. So Amy is there and Danielle. Okay. Eric.
Here.
Thank
Here.
you. Kirsten.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
Thank you, ma'am. Grayson.
Hola.
Hola, ¿cómo está? Chelsea.
Here.
Thank you, ma'am. Jason.
Here.
Oh, and that's one of the joys of Zooming is you get to hear the dog bark. Sorry about that, guys. Madeline. Ryan.
Godspeed, Bob Gibson.
Macy. Okay, Corinne Longo.
Here.
Thank you, ma'am. Jessica Lucero.
Here.
Thank you. Elizabeth Morales. I was talking to her earlier today.
I'm here.
Oh, you are? Okay, there you are. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Anna Moran.
Here.
Thank you. Anjanette.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Thank you. Olivia. Okay. Maisie. All right. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Also, from now on, I'm going to be trying to do roll at the very beginning of class. And since I'm doing it on Canvas, if you do come in late, either if we're doing Zoom or if in class, come in and come up and talk with me after class to make sure that you get credit for being there that day, okay? Because I don't want to stop a bunch of times to add people in while I'm lecturing. But I do want to make sure you get credit for being here. Okay. All right. So with that, well, first, are there any questions about the exam? I know that has been closed out now. There were a few questions about some of the arrows on the forearm. And
The first two questions for me, the picture didn't load.
the picture didn't load.
Yeah, so I
went
had to
back
guess.
and double checked that yesterday and it loaded for me, but I will just go in and delete those two. And that way nobody will get dinged for that. In fact, I just will do it right now since we're talking about it.
I had one for question 3. Mine didn't load, so I don't know. But my 1 and 2 loaded, so I
Your
don't
1 and
know.
2 loaded, huh?
Yeah, because I took a picture of it so I could remember.
Well, I'm glad you took a picture of it. Let me see if I can. Okay, there we go. I'm just gonna scrap that and scrap the second one. Anybody else have problem with the third question loading?
My third question loaded, but a bunch of them just like, we talked about this.
Yes.
The whole, I don't know what the issue with mine was.
I do not know either. We'll have to look more. Were there other people? I know there was one person concerned that some of the arrows were not specific enough. Did other people, anybody else feel that same way?
Yeah, I feel like most of the arrows were like halfway on a different muscle that we were supposed to
Ah,
hit.
I guess maybe I should have specified like the point of the arrow was what I was pointing at. So I was
Yeah,
kind of
like
limited by, let me close that door. I'm sorry. Okay, now you won't have to listen to the dog bark and compete.
no,
with
what I
that.
mean is like the point of the arrow was on one muscle, but the muscle you were having us name was the muscle right next to that.
Okay. And I think who's speaking right now? Is it
Jason.
Grayson?
Yeah, and I thought the same thing
So,
on
okay,
a
'cause I
few
remember reading
questions.
Grayson's email about it. So there was a couple question numbers that Grayson sent me. And I will go back and double check those. And if I feel that they are confusing, then I'll delete those questions. Okay. But just for future reference, it's the point of the arrow. But I also had the nice constructive criticism that perhaps using the stars is better than using the arrows.
Yeah, I agree with
So
that.
I'm going to try to do that as much as possible, is use the stars for like the muscles and groups and stuff like that, as much as I possibly can to help get rid of some of the confusion.
Thank you.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely. I am open to constructive criticism. Okay, so I will take a look at those. It was the forearm muscle, so I'll take a look at those after class today and get back with you guys about that. Okay? All right. I think we're about ready to get started. We are going to the lower appendage bones.
Before you start, can you tell us what assignments should already be done?
Good question. Okay. All right. So I have my, let me share another screen with you. Okay. Okay, so go to modules. We're going to look at our schedule. So because we finished upper appendage, so the arm muscles and all of that good stuff, you should have 5.1 and 5.2 done. Let me double check what 5. Okay. 5.1, 5.2, 5.3.
5.2 didn't have a worksheet.
Oh, okay. Then don't worry about that one. I thought I got rid of those. I probably did. I'm still looking at the old schedule. So 5.1, no 5.2, 5.3.
5.3 is supposed to be due the 7th.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
Okay. So 5.1 should be done. Then 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5 are the 7th.
There's also no worksheet for 5.4.
Sweet, there's less for you to do. Okay, so no 5.2 and no 5.4. Let me, I have a pen somewhere here. I'm gonna cross those out. So no 5.2, no 5.4. So 5.1 should be done. And then 5.3 and 5.5 are due Wednesday. Okay. And grades are up to date up through 4.5. So the only grades that I have not put into Canvas is 5.1, 5.3, and 5.5. So I'm going to wait for those 3 till after Wednesday to put those grades in. But your grades should be much more accurate to where you're at right now.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Now we'll get started. Let's switch over to lower appendage bones. And this is the exact lecture that is on Canvas. I did make some changes, mostly just adding some pictures in. But this is on Canvas, so you have the ability to access this. All right. Lower appendage bones. So first we're going to start with the pelvic girdle. And this is made up of 2 large bones. These are called the coxal bones. And these are very strong bones. They help bear the weight of your whole body above it. So from your waist above, all that weight is resting on those pelvic bones, those coxal bones. So it's more appropriate to say coxal bone than pelvic bone. Pelvic bone would be a layperson term. Coxal bone would be more scientifically correct. So the 2 coxal bones do make up the pelvis, make up most of the pelvis. The other major component of the pelvis is the sacrum. So the coxal bone is actually made up of 3 bones that fuse together during development. And so you need to know these 3 regions. The ilium, and the ilium is the part of the coxal bone that articulates with the sacrum. And I'll show you pictures here in a bit and you'll see that. The ischium, and then the pubis. So these are the 3 main regions to the coxal bone. And if I need to slow down, you just let me know. Okay, so within the coxal bone, we have several structures that we're going to need to know. One being the acetabulum. And this is where the head of the femur articulates with the coxal bone. It's a ball and socket joint. So this is also called, in layman's terms, a hip socket, because it's kind of like a curved, like half a ball. And then you have the head of the femur that fits right into it. And then it rotates, so you have good range of motion with your hip. In addition to this being the point of contact with the femur, the acetabulum is also a place where the ilium, ischium, and pubis all come together. So you find this on the lateral surface of the hip bone, of the coxal bone. So that kind of makes sense when you think about where your femur, your head of your femur is pointing medially in and articulating with that acetabulum, which is facing laterally. Okay, the actual surface where the head of the femur articulates is called the lunate surface, and there's a picture coming up here, and I'll show you the difference between the acetabulum and the lunate surface. Within the acetabulum, there is an acetabular notch. And this is a gap in the ridge of the acetabulum. So we're looking here. The acetabolism, sorry, say it so many times, you start messing it up. The acetabulum is this round portion, and it's concave. The lunate surface is the C-shaped area. That's the lunate. The whole structure would be the acetabulum. So here we have an actual bone. You can see this. The acetabulum is the whole socket where the head of the femur fits into. The smooth portion, kind of like this here, that smooth portion is the lunate surface. So when you have live bone that's articulating and bone is in contact with each other, what kind of tissue coats the surface of the bones? Does anybody remember?
Isn't it aponeurosis?
Aponeurosis is a sheet of connective tissue. It is a connective tissue, a different type of connective tissue. It is cartilage. And so the cartilage prevents those two bones from grinding on each other, and it has a little bit of shock absorption too. And so wherever you find a smooth surface at an articulating joint, that's where you know there's going to be cartilage coating that, and that's where the bone is going to be rubbing against each other. So the lunate surface is where you actually have the head of the femur in contact with the acetabulum. Okay. Oh, sorry. So this whole bone here is the coxal bone, made up of 3 regions. So your ilium, ischium, and your pubis. So if I back up real quick here, this picture is great because it shows you the 3 major regions, which I would expect you to know. The ilium is the top flared part of the coxal bone. The pubis is most anterior, and the ischium is posterior. So ilium, oh, if I could spell it right, I can't talk. I-L-I-U-M, L-I, ooh, L-I-L. Guys, I already forgot how to spell it. Oh my goodness. I-L-I-U-M. Something's going on with my screen. I'm sorry. I don't know what the deal is. There we go. I-L-I-U-M. There we go. And then this is the ischium. And then this region here is the pubis. Okay. The view that we're looking at with this bone, because remember the acetabulum is facing lateral. This is the lateral view. So anterior is this direction. So the pubis is anterior, the ischium is posterior. Okay. So make sure you know the 3 regions of the coxal bone. And then we have some spines, some regions, some surface features of the coxal bone that you need to know. So again, this is the anterior view, and this is posterior. So there are a set of 4 spines. You have 2 anterior spines and 2 posterior spines. So you have the anterior superior iliac spine. So it's anterior, superior meaning it's above iliac spine. Then we have the anterior inferior iliac spine. So they're named for their directional terms. They're both anterior, and then one is superior to the other. Okay. This whole region here, from about here to here, anybody want to guess what that's called? It's your iliac crest. Oops, I just want to write. It's being... Okay. Then 2 more spines. Now we're looking at the posterior view, posterior side. So we have the posterior superior iliac spine, and then the posterior inferior iliac spine. So if you know which side is anterior and which side is posterior, you should be able to name these 4 spines just based on their location alone. Underneath the posterior inferior iliac spine is this big notch called the greater sciatic notch. What structure do you think is running through that area?
Sciatic
The
nerve.
sciatic nerve.
That's right, the sciatic nerve. And the sciatic nerve is actually quite large on humans. It's a very large nerve. So it runs right out in between the coxal bone through this greater sciatic notch. Then we have another little spine. This little guy down here is the ischial spine, because from about here to here is the ischium. Okay, so the ischial spine. Then there is a region below that. It's kind of rough looking. This is the ischial tuberosity. This is what people call their seat bones. So if someone says you have a bony behind, that is the portion that they're feeling is your ischial tuberosity, which is that kind of bony part of your behind where you sit on. Sometimes they're called your seat bones. Okay. Now, this picture here shows you there's a lot more to know about the coxal bone. You do not need to know all of these structures, but this is just kind of a informational of there is a lot of different structures there. So I'm just doing a quick double check to see if there's anything else that I particularly want you to know. So far, we only have looked at the lateral view of the coxal bone. So we'll stick with that. One structure that I think you do need to know is the pubic tubercle. And I'll go back and show you on the other picture where it's bigger. Okay, couple more things. So we have a greater sciatic notch, right? There's also a lesser sciatic notch, which is inferior to the ischial spine. So lesser sciatic notch is right there. They are in pairs, so I thought it would be good for you to know. I'm going to make sure I say this right. Pubic tubercle right here, this bony protuberance right there, pubic tubercle. Okay. And just doing a quick double check. I think those are the major structures that you need to know. And since we only looked at the lateral view, we'll only use the lateral view for testing. Okay, so I will post this lecture on to YouTube and put the link so that you can go back and study this, because I have outlined a few other structures that you need to know. Okay, the pelvic girdle. So pelvic girdle consists of the coxal bone, so 2 coxal bones, and these are the articulation points of the pelvic girdle. There is the sacroiliac joint, and this is the joint between the sacrum and each coxal bone on either side. So let me back up and show you. So the sacrum articulates on this big, rough auricular surface on either side. And so this is the medial view of the coxal bone. But that is the auricular surface. The sacrum itself is not part of the lower limb, but I did want to mention it briefly because it is very closely related with the coxal bones, and it has a major articulation point with them. Okay. The sacroiliac joint is stabilized by ligaments of the iliac tuberosity. And the pelvis itself is comprised of 2 coxal bones, the sacrum and the coccyx. And we're not going to do the anatomy of those bones right now. That will be at a later chapter, not this chapter. So this is just to show you the 2 coxal bones. So coxal bone number 1, number 2, the sacrum, and the coccyx. All of these, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 bony structures makes up the pelvis. So we will later, in a later chapter, talk about the sacrum. That will be coming up. Okay, the lower limbs. Functions of the lower limbs: weight bearing. And the biggest bone in your body is the femur. and that is carrying all the weight from above that, from your waist up, and is transferred from your coxal bones to your femur. So it's carrying a lot of weight. So weight bearing is one of the functions. Motion, big function. We are bipedal, which means we walk on 2 legs, and motion is very important to humans. So when we're talking about the lower limb, when we refer to leg, we're referring to the lower leg. And when we say thigh, that's from like your knee up. Okay, so bones of the lower limb, you have the femur, the patella, the tibia and fibula, the tarsal bones, metatarsals, and phalanges. And the phalanges and metatarsals are numbered the same way they are with the fingers and with the metacarpals and the phalanges of the hand. They're numbered the same exact way, which makes it really great. If you know one, you've got the other one down. But you do have some ankle bones to learn today. Okay, first, here is a view of the femur looking at the anterior surface right here and posterior surface. And so we'll go through and look at each of these structures closer up and get to know the femur.
Something I know a little bit about too well, having snapped it in half.
Oh, did you? Ouch.
In the middle of the shaft, I had a benign bone cyst.
And you broke your bone, you broke it.
It shattered, basically from the greater trochanter all the way down to the bottom.
Let's see, from the greater trochanter, from here.
Yeah, it split like, went diagonal.
Oh, ouch. That does not sound fun. Diagonal like that?
Yeah, kind of a very thin diagonal line from.
I do not envy you. Didn't you also break your collarbone?
What?
Didn't you also break your collarbone?
Yeah, in 11 months I broke 2 bones.
Goodness gracious. All right. The femur. So looking at the head of the femur first, structures we need to know. So first of all, the very center of the head of the femur is a dimple. You can't really see it very well in this picture, but that's called the fovea capitis. I don't know why they didn't put the whole word there, but it's called the fovea capitis. And this is an attachment point for ligament that helps hold the femur into the acetabulum of the coxal bone. Then note, so how smooth the head of that femur is. That is the articulating surface. So it's very smooth. It's going to be coated with what kind of tissue?
Cartilage.
Cartilage, yes. It's going to be coated with cartilage to help reduce friction and give a little shock absorption. And the femur is really great because you have an obvious neck. And so the neck is going to be more narrow than the head and the other portion of the bone. Then, in addition to that, we have 2 large bony protuberances. We have the greater trochanter and the lesser trochanter. So greater trochanter is the bigger one, the bigger bump. And the lesser trochanter is smaller and also inferior. So greater is bigger and superior, and lesser is smaller and inferior. I'm going to come back to the bottom of the femur. I'm going to finish the top before we go to the bottom. Okay. So there are two other major parts at the proximal end of the femur. So remember, proximal is closer to the core of your body. So the head of the femur is proximal compared to, like, let's say the patella, your kneecap. Okay, so you have this ridge of bone right here. You have it on both the anterior and posterior view. So on the anterior view, it's not huge, it's fairly faint. We call it the intertrochanteric line. So it's literally, if we take this word apart, it's the line between the two trochanters. That's what you would see on the anterior surface. The posterior surface, it's much bigger. It's called the intertrochanteric crest, and it really is a raised portion, a ridge that connects the greater trochanter and the lesser trochanter together. This picture is also good because you can see the dimple of the fovea capitis. Okay. So there's the dimple. Okay, the distal end of the femur, if we were looking at it, this is going to be our, trying to think here. Yeah, this is the posterior view. I don't know why they didn't label it, but this is posterior. Okay, so remember how the humerus had a medial condyle, medial epicondyle, and lateral epicondyle? You also have the same thing for the femur. So this is the posterior view. The medial epicondyle is the large bump, and the head of the femur would be pointing this direction, okay, medially. Lateral epicondyle is just this little bump here. So the lateral epicondyle is small. Then, in addition to having epicondyles, there are these two broad, smooth, articulating surfaces. These are the condyles. And the medial condyle is associated with the medial side of the bone, and lateral condyle with the lateral side of the bone. And this is where the distal end of the femur is articulating with the tibia. You'll see that in the upcoming slide. Then in between the condyles is the intercondylar fossa. It's actually indentated convex region. So intercondylar literally means in between the condyles, and then fossa means cavity. So it's the cavity between the two fossas. It's the cavity between the two condyles. Okay. We're still looking at the posterior view of the bone. So along the posterior view, there are 3 lines that are of interest to us. More proximal is the linea aspera. So it's this line right here. When the linea aspera splits, one line goes to the lateral condyle and the other line goes to the medial condyle. So the line that goes to the lateral side is called the lateral supracondylar line. Supra meaning above the condyle. So this is the lateral line above the condyle. And then this is our medial side over here. Line would be our medial supracondylar line. Okay, so 3 lines on the posterior surface of the bone, the shaft itself. Linea aspera is more proximal, then the lateral and medial supracondylar lines are distal. Okay, so this leads us to our next set of bones, the tibia and fibula. And the tibia is the bigger bone. The fibula is the thinner bone that kind of nestles in to the tibia. So this is just the overall picture, and we'll look closer up at both of the proximal and distal portions of these bones. If it will, oh, there it goes. All right, so the tibia, people often will call it the shin bone. And if you feel your shin, that hard kind of sharp surface, that is the anterior margin of your tibia. There really isn't much padding there at all between the bone itself and the skin. So it's transferring the body weight. So body weight is transferring from upper body to the coxal bones, down to the femur, then to the tibia. So the tibia is carrying a lot of weight. It is larger than the fibula. The fibula is thin, kind of twiggy. Anterior view, the tibia is going to be medial. The fibula is going to be lateral. Okay, the fibula attaches muscles of feet and toes. So it has an important function. It's not weight bearing like the tibia is, where that's carrying a lot of weight, but it is an attachment site for a lot of muscles for the feet and toes. Smaller than the tibia, and it is lateral to the tibia. Okay. A little bit more on the fibula. It articulates with the tibia. And so articulation points articulates at the head at the inferior tibiofibular joint. And there'll be a picture coming up of a closer up of this so you can see. Then you also have the interosseous membrane, and this helps hold the fibula and tibia together. So it's a sheet of connective tissue, kind of like an aponeurosis, but it's called an interosseous membrane. So inter means between, Osseous means bone, so between the bones, membrane between the bones. Then we have the lateral malleolus, and this is what people often refer to as their ankle bone. So this is on the lateral side of your leg. If you reach down and feel that, you have this kind of bumpy projection at your ankle. That's actually the lateral malleolus of the fibula. It's not actually part of your ankle. Okay, so looking at kind of the proximal view of the tibia and fibula together, first of all, there's that interosseous membrane. So sheet of connective tissue that's helping to hold those two bones together. They articulate here, the head of the fibula and the fibular notch of the tibia. Proximal, on the proximal end of the tibia, proximal and anterior, there is this round projection. And I would encourage you to go feel your knee, find where your patella is, go down and find that bump. That bump below your patella is your tibial tuberosity, which is just a fun word to say too, tibial tuberosity. Okay, then that sharp edge of your shin bone is the anterior border. And then what would be fitting into this spot right here would be your patella, because this is the anterior surface. Okay, looking at the posterior view of the fibula and tibia, you have your articulating surfaces for the condyles of the femur. And then you have, oh, some books call this different. Intercondylar tubercles, or as another book calls it, the intercondylar eminence. I like that phrase. It's just fun to say again. But we'll stick with what this lecture calls it here, the intercondylar tubercles. So in between the condyles. On the posterior surface, note that there is also another line, kind of goes diagonally there, the soleal line. Okay, looking at the distal part of the tibia and fibula, we have a medial and lateral malleolus. So this is our tibia. This portion that projects down is the medial malleolus. So if you go and feel your ankle, the bony part of your ankle on the inside of your leg, inside of your ankle, that's the medial malleolus of your tibia. That's what they thought I broke when I got kicked by a horse. Didn't break it though, but it really hurt a lot. Yeah. Then, because we have a medial malleolus, we're going to have a lateral malleolus. And that belongs to the fibula, sorry. Belongs to the fibula. So this is the anterior view, and here is the posterior view. Okay, looking at the patella, There isn't a ton that you need to know about the patella. We're going to just go over a tiny bit of stuff, and then the next slide will show you what you would need to be able to identify, which is not, there's like two things, just two things. Okay, so patella, we also call it our kneecap. This is a sesamoid bone. What does that word make you think of, sesamoid?
The ethmoid bone of the skull.
Trying to remember if there's a sesamoid bone in the skull. I don't
I
believe
don't
there
think
is
so,
a
but
ses.
reminds me of the ethmoid.
Hmm?
Reminds me of the ethmoid bone.
Oh, it reminds you of the ethmoid bone. Okay,
way it sounds.
okay. Well, the sesamoid bone, well, there's a group of sesamoid bones. You have a couple, between 2 or 3 on the bottom surface of your foot. Depends on the person, whether you have 2 or you have 3. And then there's a few kind of found floating in your wrist area. They're named for their shape. So sesamoid is a lot like sesame seed, right? It's what it's named for its shape. So it literally was named for the sesame seed because it kind of had that shape. You have to use your imagination a little bit. Okay. So the patella is held within the tendon of the quadriceps femoris, which we'll talk about muscles on Wednesday. We won't get to muscles today. But that is totally embedded in that tendon. And the base attaches to the quadriceps femoris. So the base attaches to the quadriceps femoris. And, oh, I'm sorry. This is the base. That makes more sense. Attaches to your quad. The apex means point, attaches to your patellar ligament. Okay, so that is all you need to know is which end is the base, which end is the apex, and that it's the patella. You should be able to identify that as the patella bone. So you're going to see the term apex brought up multiple times again in the future. Remember, apex means the point of the bone. Is there a question? Oh, you're just turning pages. Okay. And the base is the more enlarged portion of the patella. And this is superior. And the apex is inferior. Okay. We're doing pretty good with time, guys. Okay, the ankle. Collectively is also called the tarsus because it is comprised of the tarsal bones. So there are 7 tarsal bones, and you do need to know all of them. So bones of the ankle, these are the bones that you'll need to know. The talus, and this carries the weight from the tibia down to the trochlea, to the surface of the talus. The calcaneus, also referred to as the heel bone. And this transfers the weight from the talus down to the ground. And this is also the attachment point for the calcaneal tendon or the Achilles tendon. Now, does everybody know the story of Achilles? Greek mythology. Well, maybe I'll save that for Wednesday. I think we'll do our joints Wednesday and start in on our muscles on Wednesday. But if we need to do a little Greek mythology refresher, we will, and how it relates to the calcaneal bone, because it's kind of interesting. Then the cuboid bone articulates with a calcaneus, your heel bone. So here we have, this is a great picture. Picture I would use, it would look pretty much just like this, except for it wouldn't have all of the bone names on it. So the talus is this bone right here. The trochlea is the smooth surface where articulation is occurring. The calcaneus is the heel bone, the largest tarsal bone. Okay, so you're transferring weight from the talus down to the calcaneus, and then from the calcaneus down to the ground. Okay, the navicular articulates, so here's our navicular, kind of more of a, it's kind of like you had a marshmallow and squished it. Kind of a squished marshmallow, or those kind of flattened marshmallows that they sell now. That's kind of like the shape of the navicular. And that's between the talus and the cuneiforms. So there are 3 cuneiform bones, and they're named for their location: medial, intermediate, and lateral cuneiform. So medial is going to be the most midline, closest to the midline, intermediate, and then lateral. And then the last ankle bone that wasn't mentioned there is the cuboid bone here. So those are the bones of the ankle: your talus, your calcaneus, your navicular, so that's 3. Then 3 cuneiforms makes 6, plus the cuboid, so there's 7 bones of the ankle. So here we are looking at this a little more closely. You can see that the surface here is very smooth, and this is where you have the articulation of the tibia articulating with talus. Okay, metatarsals and phalanges. So the metatarsals are synonymous with your metacarpals from your hand. They're kind of found in the same region of the foot as you would find them in the hand, and they're numbered the same way. These are long bones, numbered 1 through 5, Roman numerals, from most medial to lateral. So from the hallux would be your big toe, down to your pinky toe, which would be number 5. Oh my goodness, I just freaked out. I'm home alone and it sounded like someone was opening my door, but it's the dog scratching on the door. Oh, just had a freak out there, guys. Okay. All right. Regrouping. Okay, so the metatarsals articulate with the toes. So here are our metatarsals right here. So number 1 being of the hallux for the big toe, and then numbered up to 5 out the most lateral. So the same way you did it with the fingers. Okay, and then the phalanges, same way you did it with the fingers, the phalanges of the hand. And the hallux only has 2. You have the distal phalange and the proximal phalange, or phalanx. I need to be more, no, it's phalange. So there's only 2 in the big toe, in the hallux. In digits 2, 3, 4, and 5, you have a distal phalange, an intermediate phalange, and a proximal phalange. So same way it was with the hand, where you only had 2 for the thumb, you only have 2 for the big toe, your hallux. And then you have 3 for each of the other phalanges. Okay, so this is just showing you a close-up of your metatarsals and your phalanges. Please remember the hallux is the exception. Which bone is it missing?
Middle.
Middle.
Yes, the middle
Medial.
phalange. So you guys will get this right. You have the distal phalange and the proximal phalange, but no middle phalange. Good. All right. That is all of the bones of the lower limb. And I think we're going to end with that for today. And we will start with the articulations of the lower limb on Wednesday and then move into muscle. Are there any questions about what we covered today?
Just remember to check my email before I get all the way out to main campus.
Oh, I am so sorry. It was kind of last minute.
No, that's okay. I didn't check that after I got home from work. So.
Will we be in class on Wednesday or on
As
Zoom?
far as I know, if I will know sooner, so I should know by the morning of Wednesday if we need to have Zoom or not. So just make sure you check by mid-morning and you should be good.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah,
Alrighty.
I
Mhm.
deeply apologize. I did not get the news till we had a couple sick classmates until around 5 o'clock today. And that's when I had to kind of make a decision of, well, maybe we should just Zoom today and avoid.
I'm fine with
this.
Zoom.
I'm fine with Zoom too.
I'm fine
Yeah.
with Zoom. It's nice not having to leave.
I agree. I like it too. But if we can meet in class, we should meet in class. So we'll see how it's going like Tuesday night. And I should hopefully have an announcement Tuesday night, Wednesday morning.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, my friends? No? All right. Then I will let you guys go. Have a fantastic evening. And
You too.
thank you. And I will be in touch
You
with you
too.
guys soon. Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.